YouTube's darkest videos, number 8. Let's get into it. I'm excited for this one.
It was 2:46 p.m. when the ground began to shake.
Earthquake.
Knock it off.
For residents of Anagawa, Japan, earthquakes were nothing new, but this one was different.
Holy shit.
It carried with it a violence that none of the locals had ever felt before, and by the time the shaking had stopped, everyone in the city seemed to be left in a momentary state of shock. This was especially true for the nearly 160 Chinese workers and students that had recently moved to the area, with most having never experienced any earthquake, let alone one of this magnitude.
Because in Japan, they're common, you know.
Of these workers were a tight-knit group of 20 women who had recently been hired as trainees at a company called Sato, a company that sold fresh seafood. And having been at work at the time of the quake, they frantically ran out of the building and stood in the street desperately trying to figure out what to do next, unaware of the fact that the real horrors were still yet to come.
Oh no.
In Japan, it's not just the earthquakes you have to worry about, but the tsunamis that often follow. And usually, the bigger the earthquake, the bigger the wave. And given that Anagawa was right on the sea, and Sato was directly on the shoreline, these women were now standing directly in the path of an impending disaster. Thankfully, their boss, Mitsudo Sato, was well aware of what was to come, and quickly he yelled to the women to seek higher ground. But given their unfamiliarity with the area, Sato knew that he would have to be the one to lead them there. The group readily listened, and they quickly followed Sato as he led them up a set of stairs on a nearby hill, where they eventually reached a shrine that overlooked Anagawa and the sea. It was the highest point in the area, and should keep them safe from what would likely be a massive influx of water. And sure enough, as they neared the top, Sato's fears were already coming true. As the sea had drastically retreated, it was now beginning to push forward.
Oh my gosh.
And things were only going to get worse from here. But despite understanding this, it wasn't a deterrent for Sato, as once he deemed the altitude safe enough for this group of women, he then turned around and began to walk back down the hill towards the slowly flooding city.
Why?
The girls yelled at him asking where he was going, which is when he revealed that down below in his home in Anagawa were his wife and his daughter, who were now directly in the path of this unfolding disaster.
Shit, bro, that's
and he was going to save them. The girl screamed out to him, begging him not to go, as things had already become incredibly dangerous, but he didn't so much as turn his head as he stepped down onto the street and disappeared from their view. And it was at this time that one of those girls standing high atop the hill began to record.
YouTube's darkest videos 8. That was the intro.
All my life, family has been super important to me. I
He's
love
doing
my
a sponsor.
family, but I also realize I don't know much about them, at least outside of my immediate family members.
And my immediate family
the number
members.
would be able to
No, the little girl, bro, I know.
serve. This one details that
Okay,
I honestly
Nick Crowley, we love you, but we don't need to know about your heritage. Chapter 1. Mitsudo Sato tsunami footage. What's up? Welcome, German Cat. How you doing today? Actually, wait. Before I start, I got to VIP you. I said I'd do that. There you go. Alright, let's go. So this is the tsunami that happened.
The footage shows that the shoreline was no more, as the water had inundated the entire area as it slowly crept its way deeper and deeper into the city streets.
Bro, imagine how scared they would
were
be.
Understandably in a panic, trying to make sense of this ordeal that they were now given a front row seat to. And as they record, we can hear them desperately calling out for Sato, but at no point do we see him. We just know that he's down there, somewhere. And as the desperation in their pleas increases, so too does the fury of the water.
Welcome to the stream. Bro, look at the cars. Look at that. It's like a pool. It's like a pool, bro. This scares me in Japan. Like, I love Japan. But this is what scares me. What are we watching? We're watching YouTube's darkest videos at number 8. Bro.
They could only watch as Anagawa as they knew it was completely eviscerated.
Bro, look at that destruction. That's like houses. There's a whole house in there.
And by this point, they realized that there was now essentially no hope for Sato. It was at this time that the women realized that despite already being at a considerable height, it still might not be enough, and so they ran even higher up the hill, desperately trying to get out of the path of this water.
That looks like it's taken up straight out of the Godzilla movie. I know, bro. Like, I knew tsunamis were bad, but
and
like...
as they did so, they noticed something down below.
Don't tell me they see him.
Standing on a rooftop in the middle of this massive tsunami was Mitsudo Sato. The building that he stood on was once a full 2 stories off the ground, but was now just a few inches above the surface of the water.
Get off there, run, boy!
The women again call out to him, this time even more frantically, but at this point, it was no use.
I literally just played Schedule 1
when the
with
camera
Sarah.
was taken off Sato for just a split second, we can hear just from the women's reaction, the exact moment that he swept away. The recording stopped shortly after.
Shit, Godic phone, yeah, we'll do Godic phone
later, revealing that the streets where the women had been standing just moments before were now fully underwater, and the buildings that once stood around them were now reduced to nothingness.
That's crazy.
In front of them
Look
was
at
a
the
sea of
buildings.
death, and had Mitsudo Sato not led them up that hill, then all of these women would have certainly been a part of it.
He saved them.
The date was March 11th, 2011. A day where Japan had been hit by its most devastating earthquake ever, with it ringing in at a magnitude 9.0, which in turn caused the nation's worst ever tsunami, as that day, 19,759 people would lose their lives.
Gang, rest in peace.
With Mitsudo Sato being one of them.
He saved
but against
them,
all odds, his wife and daughter were not part of that death toll, as it's been reported that they were later found alive and unharmed. The devastation that occurred that day is incomprehensible, and all the footage of this disaster could warrant a place in this video, especially the footage of Anagawa, as you can see what it looked like before, during, and after.
Yo, earthquakes be crazy.
But what I found so interesting about this was all throughout this disaster were stories like Sato's, a man who risked his life to save 20 women that he hardly knew, and a man who gave his life trying to save his family, walking directly into the path of the worst natural disaster in modern Japanese history, all in an attempt to save the ones that he loved. And I honestly find it quite beautiful that afterwards, these women adamantly shared his story and made sure that the world forever remembered Mitsudo Sato as the hero that he was. And of those 160 Chinese migrants who worked in the area, it was later reported that not a single one of them perished, which speaks volumes about the people of Anagawa, who so readily put others' lives before their own.
They all survived, dang. Well, that one was sad as hell. Chapter 2. Let's see chapter 2. The man in the garage. I say garage, but garage. Gay rage. Anyway, alright, let's see this.
It was just past 5:30 a.m. on the 17th of February 2021 when residents of a small neighborhood in Georgetown, Ontario were woken by the sound of sirens blaring. One man frantically grabbed his cell phone and rushed outside to record the unfolding scene, where he was met with a horrific sight.
Yo.
His neighbor's home was fully engulfed in flames. It must have happened quickly, as by the time rescue workers even arrived on the scene, there was already little hope of saving the house or any of its occupants.
Did you guys see that? Wait, look at the damage.
It would take hours before that blaze was finally quelled, revealing the charred devastation inside, as firefighters would find the remains of 56-year-old Christina Rirak and 59-year-old Andrew Rirak within the home's garage.
Why were they in the garage?
The cause of this fire was initially unknown, but quickly the situation was deemed suspicious when experts determined that the fire had started as a result of some sort of explosion that had happened within the garage where the couple's bodies were found.
Explosion?
This was later confirmed by security footage obtained from a neighbor who lived across the street, capturing the moment when it suddenly ignited around 5:27 a.m.
Yeah, that's like somebody's doing that
with this case, and things only became.
Chad, somebody's doing that. Ain't no garage or like car that's just gonna explode. Somebody's in that garage doing that.
More sinister following the autopsies of Andrew and Christina, which revealed that they hadn't actually died in that fire, and instead, both of them had been stabbed to death, with Andrew also being badly beaten.
I said somebody was gonna do it
This fire wasn't started to kill them. It was started to cover up their murder. And it did a good job of it too, as the scene was now left completely destroyed, with very little evidence being left behind. But there was something else investigators thought to check. That's security footage. The camera had been facing the garage where all of this carnage seemed to have happened, and so they thought maybe if they looked back far enough, it could at the very least show what had led up to this brutal attack.
Yeah, exactly.
And so they rewound that footage, going back hours and hours, during all of which the garage had remained perfectly still, until they got all the way back to 6:42 of the day prior, February 16th.
Okay. It's a nice car. Okay, the music is kind of scaring me. I don't like it.
The film showed the moments that the couple had arrived home together inside of Christina's car, which Andrew had been driving that night, as he pulled uneventfully into the garage. This was the last time this couple was seen alive on camera, which on its own is disturbing enough. But as it turns out, there was something far more unsettling about this footage, as it revealed the fact that Christina and Andrew weren't alone.
They weren't alone in the car? Or like someone was in the garage with them? Wait, we're gonna see. Oh, who the hell is that? Where did that guy come from, bro? He just came out the shadows, chat. He's a fucking skinwalker, bro. This guy just came out the shadows.
The footage showed a tall figure, its features completely shrouded in darkness, almost as if it were a shadow, with this figure lying in wait out of sight on the side of the house, until right after Andrew pulls the car into the garage, when this person slips in behind them. It's impossible to say for sure if the couple noticed this person or not, but it appears that they likely didn't, as they both start to exit the vehicle.
Is he wearing
which
all
the
black?
figure then ducks down in an attempt to avoid detection.
How could they not see him through the windows, though? Nah, that's
until
scary
the garage
as hell.
door begins to slowly close. Either Christina or
Chat, I kind of want to check my garage now. Because, like, they didn't even notice that guy. Bro, you can't sleep tonight?
Andrew would make it out of that garage
sorry, bro.
alive,
I'm
as
sorry,
just
bro.
seconds after this footage, they both would be brutally murdered by this unidentified person.
Shit.
The footage is terrifying and speaks to that innate fear in most of us. The fear of being followed, of being watched, and attacked in the moments where we
wearing
least expect
all black.
it. It's paranoia-inducing,
music, I know,
and made
yeah.
even more off-putting by the fact that this clearly seemed to be premeditated. Whoever this was knew their schedule and had been waiting for them to arrive home, in a place where they knew they wouldn't be seen.
Dang.
But by this point, their motivation was as unknown as their identity. Following the discovery of this footage, bits and pieces were released to the press in order
You got a pretty scary story too, like being watched? Oh, dang.
to get the public's help in identifying this unknown assailant. It represented a rare instance of a killer being clearly caught on camera right before committing a crime.
Yeah, but you guys,
that's also
they
what made
can't
this
see-
case so frustrating.
they
As
can't
despite
see
the video
anything from the
capturing this
video.
person, none of their features were discernible at all.
Exactly. Like, how are you gonna tell it from just like...
Unsurprisingly, the footage didn't bring in any relevant leads, but it at the very least showed investigators that whoever this person was knew the couple, due to its obvious premeditation.
Your dad not well in his head, so your dad has stalked your family? Dang. He stalks your family, bro? Shit. Are you good, Chris?
Though when looking into both Andrew and Christina, it was clear that neither of them really had any enemies in their life,
I have no enemies.
with the exception of one. Harrison Brown was a 27-year-old employee at a company called Rogue Transportation,
He's been to jail 5 times?
of which Christina
Shit.
happened to be the vice president of operations. And during his time there, Harrison was known to be abrasive and combative, with Christina often having to be the one to reprimand him, leading to Harrison resenting her. It isn't clear how police were tipped off about this strained working relationship, but they had somehow grown suspicious enough of Harrison to pay his home a visit, and what they found inside showed that this resentment he had towards Christina had actually morphed into a twisted obsession.
Oh, so she's got a stalker.
Inside, police found satellite images of the Rerack's home, along with the software on the man's computer and cell phone that showed that on the 12th of February, he had secretly attached a tracking device to Christina's car. and he had been tracking her movements for days, which is precisely how he knew when she would be arriving home. And as if this revelation wasn't damning enough, they would also find a broken knife in his garage that contained trace amounts of Christina's blood.
Oh yeah, look him up.
It was obvious what Harrison had done.
And
when confronted with this evidence, there was nothing more he could say other than the truth. So he admitted he had grown a hatred for Christina because of the way that she had treated him at work. And he decided that he needed to get his revenge.
Goddick phone 1 off
That's
this
when
video.
he purchased this tracking device and began obsessing over her movements,
Bro, I'm
studying
like,
them.
that's crazy. You have that much hatred for somebody, you follow their car, you track them home, then blow up their fucking house and kill them both. Like, what? This was our last 3 people died? Holy shit. Holy shit, bro. Did you take that image? Dang.
Before finding the perfect time and place to strike. And on February 16th, he waited outside the Rear-X home and snuck into their garage before attacking and killing them both.
Hell nah.
After the assault, Harrison would leave the home, where he began to grow paranoid about being caught, and so he returned to the house the very next morning to start that fire, with the hopes being that the blaze would cover up his tracks.
How did he start the fire?
Though thankfully, this didn't work. And after pleading guilty to 2 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of arson, Harrison Brown would be sentenced to life in prison.
Your little brother just scared you? Dang. At least he got arrested. At least that was justice, you know what I'm saying? Alright, chapter 3. Officers, Feasters, Dashcam. Officer... Oh, it's a dashcam. I love dashcam videos. I love dashcam videos.
It's the eve of Thanksgiving, 2015.
10
Police
years ago.
officer Patrick Feaster sits in his cruiser parked alongside the road in the town of Paradise, California, waiting for his first
Sunny
action
California.
of
Okay,
this
let's go.
uncharacteristically quiet night. His car was facing the direction of a well-known local cantina, which patrons were known to drive away from under the influence. And sure enough, as the clock approached midnight, the calmness around Feaster would be shattered by the sight of a car speeding out of the restaurant's parking lot.
Where's the speeding?
The car went unseen by Feaster's dashcam, but not by Feaster himself, as he took off, doing his best to catch up with the car that was now speeding down the road. And within a few seconds, he does.
Is he just camping, trying to find criminals?
As the car slowly comes into frame for the first time. Inside that vehicle was 26-year-old Andrew Thomas and his ex-wife, 23-year-old Darian Aaron. Andrew had been drinking heavily that night and was well over the legal limit, with his driving showing as much as he failed to pull over once Feaster approached him, resulting in a police chase that would only end up lasting just a few seconds.
Did he crash? He must have crashed. Oh shit, yeah, he crashed. Shit. That does not look good.
Copy, roll over TC, east of Black Olive.
Look at the car,
As
bro.
Andrew
It's
would drive his
tipped.
car directly into a median, causing the SUV to flip over violently before coming to a halt on its side. In that instant, Darian was ejected from the vehicle, being thrown straight through the windshield and landing onto the asphalt, where despite still being alive, her injuries were likely unsurvivable. But Andrew, on the other hand, was still inside the vehicle, and he seemed to have been left relatively unharmed. As perhaps being boosted by adrenaline, he quickly tried to crawl his way out of the car
He's
in a
getting
desperate
out of the
attempt
car?
to check on Darian, with Officer Feaster's
Holy
dashcam
shit.
capturing the entire ordeal. Though just as Andrew attempted to do so, we see Feaster step into the frame,
Why is he holding a gun at him?
where he suddenly draws his gun, and without saying a single word, fires 2 shots at Andrew, with one of the bullets appearing to strike him,
Bro,
causing
what-
his body to go limp
what
as he
the
falls back
fuck?
into the car.
What are these American police doing, bro?
It happened
Shooting?
in a literal instant.
Why?
So fast that it's clear Feaster had most likely accidentally discharged his weapon, as there was no attempt at communication before the shot was fired,
Bro.
with Andrew clearly posing no
Why would he just go up to the guy who just been in a fucking car and then just try and shoot him? What?
risk to him, as both of his hands were being used to hoist himself up. From the footage, this all seems to be a horrible accident,
No,
and
it's
one
not.
that Feaster seemed to recognize right away, as he rushed up to the car, pointing his flashlight at the man that he had just shot, staring at him for over 10 seconds,
How is that an
trying to make
accident?
sense of what he had just done.
He just got out his gun and
before he
shot him,
finally snaps
bro.
out of it, and uses his radio to call for backup.
That ain't an
But
accident.
this is when this already dark video starts to become much more disturbing.
Bro, how? He's still
I've got an
alive?
unresponsive female. I got a male in the car refusing to get out.
What?
When Feaster makes this call, he never mentions the shooting, and instead he states that the driver was refusing to get out of the vehicle.
What?
This is then followed by Feaster walking away from the man and pointing his flashlight to the ground, almost as if he was looking for something.
Copy. Give your cross on Black Olive.
What is this police doing, bro?
Copy. Black Olive and Pearson.
With some theorizing that he was looking for his shell casings. Though right then, another officer arrives on the scene and begins to survey the wreckage.
Just her?
No, there's a man in the car refusing to get out.
Where,
Because you
again,
fucking shot him,
Feaster
bro.
says that Andrew was refusing to get out of the car.
Because you shot him.
Making no mention of the fact that he had just shot him.
Did he die?
It's clear at this point what Feaster was trying to do. He was trying to cover up his accident. But this suddenly became more difficult when Andrew started to speak.
Okay, they got one. He's refusing to get out. Get out of the car, sir. You're not shot, sir. Get out of the car.
Andrew Thomas was still alive and had muttered to Feaster that he had been shot. But even to his face, Feaster denies it. Shortly after, Andrew then tries to tell the other cop what had happened.
Sir, you can come out of the car, but the car is still on, and I don't want you to get hurt. Yeah, I was right there. I saw it.
You are not shot, but he fucking is. There's literally a body cam proof of it.
Who shot you? The cop did not shoot you.
But understandably, this other cop wasn't believing him, as surely Feaster would have said something at this point. And so, the minutes start to pass.
Imagine
and
not
after
being
5
believed,
full
bro.
minutes, Feaster continues processing the scene like nothing had happened, with the other officer being left to theorize that Andrew must have been seriously injured and was likely in a state of shock, which is why he was making all of these strange claims about being shot.
He may be hurt in there. Yeah, I know he is. He's in shock at the very least.
He's
From
going to
here,
die
the footage
now.
cuts, and we're only left with the audio from that same officer's body cam, as he attempts to get more information from Andrew.
Sir, I need you to talk to me so I know you're okay. Sir, take a look at me. Did you bump your head?
But by this point,
He's been fucking shot
he
by
had
the
gone
police.
completely silent.
So he's dead. Hell no.
10 minutes later, the footage then cuts back on, this time to another officer's body cam, which shows that an ambulance had now finally arrived on the scene, with medics first directing their attention to Darian, who was in the worst shape, as she would tragically be pronounced dead shortly after. But despite all of these first responders on the scene, none of them had any idea that the man inside that vehicle had just been shot, and shot by one of their colleagues. And in these moments, Andrew was slowly losing his life as each minute passed. It would take 11 full minutes before Feaster finally confessed.
Sir, you hold this scene, Manny, with me. We're going over to the cantina to find out if this guy...
I wasn't even pointing at him.
Saying that he might have shot the man, but he wasn't sure. And
Bro.
immediately after saying this,
Oh my God, are you serious?
the recording is stopped, and the footage comes to an end. Sure enough, in that moment, Officer Patrick Feaster had in fact shot Andrew Thomas, with a bullet striking him directly in the neck. And the reason why he wasn't getting out of his vehicle was because that gunshot had left him fully paralyzed from the neck down. His condition was awful, and made worse by the length of time that it took for him to receive proper treatment. And despite fighting for weeks, Andrew Thomas would lose his life less than 1 month later, due to that gunshot wound.
Dang,
Afterwards,
bro.
Feaster admitted that he did fire his gun, but claimed that in the moment he wasn't actually sure if he had hit Andrew. But many found this hard to believe, as his gun clearly goes off while he's pointing it at Andrew, and he clearly gets a good view of him immediately after the fact. Not to mention the fact that Andrew literally told him over and over again that he was shot. But for many, by far the most incriminating moment was when Feaster appeared to be looking for his shell casings. And because of his actions, Officer Patrick Feaster would be found guilty of manslaughter and receive a prison sentence of 180 days. A decision that was heavily contested but ultimately upheld.
That's crazy.
And while no one is defending Andrew Thomas's decision to drink and drive that night, Feaster's use of deadly force and his blatant attempt at covering it up make
crazy,
this footage
bro.
harrowing nonetheless.
180 days for killing somebody. There are many possibilities of feast intentionally shot. It's difficult to explore this without being able to show the full footage, so I recommend looking up the case for yourself and drawing your own conclusion. Okay, bro. Alright.
For real, bro. I don't got no problem with giving back, man.
Chapter 4, chat. W video so far. Young QC gives back.
It's May 2013. 23-year-old Quamaine Wilson arrives at his local bank in Chicago, Illinois to deposit $20,000 cash, which he planned on giving out to groups of his most adoring fans.
Man, about to go get this $1,000 out for the fans, man. Really, I'm gonna take out $20,000, man. Just to show people, you feel me? I'm on a whole different level with this.
To this point, Quamaine had carved out a respectable following on his YouTube
Is he a
channel,
rapper?
where he acted in a series called The Nick Story.
One more word out your mouth, and that's your ass, that's your life. I'm gonna take
he's
it
an actor.
myself and put it in my graveyard with the rest of them.
Along with posting music he made under the name Young QC.
Oh, he's a rapper.
But not until she's
Ooh, wait!
Based on his viewership alone, his success was apparent, and he wasn't shy about showing off the wealth that he claimed to have accrued as a result of it, posting photos and videos of himself flaunting large amounts of cash across his social media pages. But this video was by far his most boastful yet, as he would take that $20,000 and throw it into the air for all of his fans to fight over.
Shit,
With
where was
Quamaine
I this
clearly
day?
relishing in the opportunity to show off his riches, despite the fact that behind the scenes, things weren't quite as they seemed. The truth was, Quamaine had actually earned very little from his channel despite its viewership, with this being on account of his videos containing copywritten music, and the fact that he only had a dozen or so uploads. In fact, his social media flexing had started well before he even made his first video, as in reality, all of this money was coming straight from his mother, Yolanda Holmes. Having started a successful business in Chicago, Yolanda made a great living for herself and Quamaine. And being her only son, Quamaine was given just about anything he could have asked for. She would buy him designer clothes, jewelry, and even the Mustang seen in this video. But for Quamaine, it never seemed to be enough. He wanted to achieve a life of fame and riches, and he used his mother's finances to sell the illusion that he already had, asking her again and again to purchase him things that could help him sell this dream, until one day, it all came crashing down, when Yolanda would tragically lose her life.
Dang, rest in peace.
Just like that, Quamaine's entire support system had fallen out beneath his feet, leaving him without his mother and without the provider who was
Fake
funding
it till you
his
make it,
entire
I
life.
guess. I mean,
But strangely, this didn't seem to stop his lavish online presence. In fact, his spending only seemed to increase after this, as this footage of him giving away money to fans actually took place after the death of his mother, which became extremely off-putting for law enforcement.
Why is he doing
as
that?
Yolanda hadn't simply passed away, and instead, she had been brutally murdered.
I thought he was gonna say that.
Quamaine had learned something shortly before Yolanda's passing, that not only were his mother's savings entirely willed to him, but she had also taken out 2 life insurance policies, in which he was the sole beneficiary. And despite Yolanda giving him anything that he could have asked for, it seemed that by this point, Quamaine had simply grown tired of having to ask. And so, on September 2nd, 2012, he would offer his friend Eugene Spencer $3,500 to kill his own mother.
What?
Eugene accepted the offer, and that night he would travel to the apartment of Yolanda Holmes late at night, where he entered her room and shot her multiple times as she slept.
This guy paid for his mom to get killed?
At the time, her boyfriend had been sleeping next to her, and despite jumping up and doing his best to fight off the attacker, Eugene would eventually beat him unconscious before fleeing the scene. Eugene would call Quamaine immediately after the attack to tell him that the job was done, but rather than feeling any sort of guilt, Quamaine instead had no emotion, and he simply stated,
Nah, he's like,
"Make sure the bitch is dead."
yeah, he's
And so
gone.
Eugene went back up to that unit, this time brandishing a knife, and repeatedly stabbed Yolanda until he was absolutely certain she was gone.
But that's
And
your
with
mother,
that,
bro.
Quamaine Holmes was a rich man, and it only cost him the life of his own mother.
That's your mother. He crazy.
For a
child.
moment, the crime had worked perfectly. The police were left with no concrete leads as to who might have killed Yolanda, and the public largely believed that it was her boyfriend, whom Eugene had knocked unconscious. But no one even thought to look at Quamaine. And recognizing that he was in the clear, his behavior grew brazen almost immediately.
Quamaine Wilson lost his mother to gun violence on November 14th.
Because he
My
did it.
mother, she was a neighborhood woman. A guy entered her home, and murdered her, just to steal.
As he went on TV to talk about his mother's murder, where he peddled the theory to the public that this was some sort of botched robbery. All the while, he showed no emotion. He wouldn't even wait a full week before depositing the money, as he took out $90,000 within just the first few days, and immediately began showing it off to his followers. And in this footage where he gave away that $20,000, throwing it into the air as if it meant nothing to him, every cent of that had come from the death of his own mother, a death in which he was entirely responsible for. It would take over a full year for Quamain and Eugene to be caught, with police largely being tipped off by his online antics. And in the end, Eugene was given a 100-year prison sentence, while Quamain received 99 years.
Well, they ain't getting out.
With his legacy now permanently defined by his creation of one of YouTube's darkest videos.
I kind of want to see the video on YouTube now. Dang, the end. Amazing video. www.